right, so get ready
Wow.
because we're diving into Earth's mightiest today.
Oh, yeah.
This is a world that's been really rocked by global invasion.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, it faces some seriously complex moral dilemmas.
Yeah, they really threw everything A&D the kitchen sink at this one.
It's like somebody took like classic superhero tropes
Yeah.
and then just threw in some like gritty geopolitics and then just hit blend. You know?
Yeah, totally. I mean, what's really interesting is how they use this Superman-like figure,
Right.
Stratos, to really kind of dig into not just like the whole power fantasy thing, but also like the disillusionment that can come with it. You know, when you see what's really going on in the world.
Yeah, and like even for somebody with superpowers.
Totally.
So we're going to be looking at character outlines, some world-building notes,
Yep.
and even some dialogue snippets to really try to get a grip on this alternate reality.
Yeah, I think it's helpful to kind of lay the groundwork first. So imagine a world where this like subterranean race called the Terrarians, they nearly wipe out like all of humanity.
Oh, wow.
Right, except, and this is a big except, Israel somehow manages to like dodge the final battle.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So they're just left untouched.
Pretty much.
Wow.
Yeah, so it makes you think, right?
It does.
Like what was their role in the aftermath?
Oh.
I mean, the sources definitely suggest that like Israel's actions post-invasion, they're stirring up a lot of controversy.
Yeah, bet.
Particularly when it comes to like America's unwavering support, you know?
Right, and that's a big thing even outside of this fictional world.
Totally.
Like if you think about real-world debates about foreign aid and intervention, it's like the creators are tapping into like all these anxieties people have.
Oh, yeah.
But they're just like turning the dial up to 11, you know?
Yeah.
And like we see this reflected in like in-world news snippets and social media posts about how much money the U.S. sends to Israel.
Right.
Even though like America itself is still rebuilding from this invasion.
Yeah, and then you've got the Chosen People Act,
Yeah.
which is basically the government saying like,
oh my God.
you can't criticize Israel.
Wow.
Like at all.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's kind of a chilling look at how like power can be used to silence dissent, even in a supposed democracy.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Like you're not even allowed to question it.
Wow. So you've got this backdrop of global tension and political maneuvering. And then in the middle of it all is Stratos. He is just like the classic Superman archetype, you know, super strength flight, the whole 9 yards.
Totally. And initially, like, he's really a symbol of hope.
Right.
You know, like he embodies these classic American ideals, which I think makes his journey even more compelling.
Okay.
Because unlike Superman, Stratos actually loses his powers for a time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's like the creators wanted to strip him down, make him vulnerable, and force him to see the world from like a totally different perspective, you know?
Yeah. And what does he do during that time?
Well, he becomes a truck driver.
A truck driver?
Yeah.
Wow.
He's like trying to live a normal life, you know?
Right.
But the world's got other plans.
Of course, right.
And his powers eventually come back, but by then, his whole perspective has shifted. He's not that naive symbol of hope anymore.
Yeah.
You know?
He's seen the world.
Right. And I think that's really where the conflict with the Messiah comes into play.
Okay.
So the Messiah is this ultra-Zionist super being who basically believes he's a god. And he's, like, entitled to Palestinian land.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. His actions are, like, bordering on genocide. And to make matters worse, the U.S. government is, like, totally backing him up.
Wow. So they're just, like, blindly following along?
Pretty much, yeah. They're influenced by this shadowy Council of 12.
Oh, geez.
And they're just, like, rubber stamping whatever the Messiah wants.
So it's like a total clash of ideologies then?
Oh, absolutely.
With the Stratos and the Messiah.
Yeah. It's like watching Superman go up against, like, a Homelander figure.
Right. But
with all the weight of real-world history and conflict just, like, woven into it, you know?
And it's all kind of kicked off by the destruction of the West Bank barrier.
Right, during the Terrarian invasion.
Yeah.
So this allows Palestinians to reclaim their land, which leads to the War of Jericho.
Okay, wow.
And this is where Stratos' faith in both Israel and America starts to, like, completely fall apart.
Yeah.
He sees just how brutal the Israeli occupation is firsthand.
What?
You know, IDF snipers killing children.
Oh, my gosh.
Organ harvesting factories.
That's awful.
Yeah, it's like all this stuff that just totally shatters this image of, like, the good guys, you know?
Yeah, and it makes you think, can a symbol like Superman,
right,
or in this case, Stratos, even exist in a world where good and evil are so, like, blurred.
Yeah.
And where the country that he represents is actually like complicit in all these atrocities.
Right. It cuts to the core of his struggle.
Yeah.
And it really sets him apart from the traditional Superman,
Yeah.
He's being forced to confront all these like uncomfortable realities that a lot of superhero narratives just kind of gloss over.
Right. They just kind of sweep it under the rug.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Stratos can't do that anymore.
Right. He's seen too much.
Exactly. And it's that disillusionment, that really pushes Stratos to his breaking point.
Yeah.
He can't just stand by and watch these innocent people suffer anymore.
Uh-huh.
So he decides to confront the Messiah.
Oh, wow.
At Ben Gurion Airport, of all places.
So it's not just like a war of words or something?
No, it goes way beyond that.
Okay.
During the duel, Stratos actually targets Israeli military satellites.
Oh, wow. He's really taking a stand.
Yeah, he's trying to weaken their advantage in the War of Jericho.
Right.
But of course, this gets him branded a traitor.
Oh, yeah, I bet.
I mean, just think about it for a second.
Okay.
The literal symbol of American might
Uh-huh.
turning against a supposed ally.
It's a huge deal.
It really shows just how disillusioned he's become.
How far he's moved away from, like, blind patriotism.
Yeah, it's like the creators are asking, what happens when Superman sees the cracks in the system?
Right.
When he realizes that the people he's supposed to be protecting are the ones getting hurt by, those in power.
Exactly. And the sources actually suggest that after this confrontation, Stratos just vanishes.
It disappears.
Gone.
Wow.
Some people think he's joined the Palestinian resistance.
Oh, wow.
Which would be a huge symbolic shift.
Yeah, for sure.
But while all this is going on, things are really starting to spiral back in America.
Right, because it's not like everything just stopped after the Terrarian invasion.
Absolutely. The invasion and the War of Jericho really just exposed all these fault lines in American society.
Yeah, people are angry, they're disillusioned, and they're feeling exploited.
Exactly. And that's where Sergeant Sharia comes in.
Okay.
He's this war veteran who's seen firsthand the ugly side of U.S. foreign policy.
Right.
He ends up embracing Islam and forms the Islamic States of America, advocating for a nation that's totally free of Israeli influence.
That's a pretty radical shift.
It is. He's like a dark reflection of Captain America.
Oh, interesting.
Another symbol of American might, but fighting for a very different vision.
Yeah.
And he starts to gain a lot of support from people who are tired of endless war and who feel like their voices aren't being heard.
Right, like nobody's listening to them.
Exactly. And there's even hints in the sources that Sergeant Sharia might have powers of his own.
Oh, really?
Yeah, potentially linked to some secret government program.
Oh, wow. So it's like they're setting up this internal conflict.
Right.
Mirroring the ideological battle between Stratos and the Messiah.
Exactly. It's like a microcosm of the larger global struggle.
Yeah.
And then just to throw another wrench into the works.
Okay. There's more?
Yeah. We've got Jinx entering the picture.
Jinx?
Yeah. He's this Jawa assassin.
Okay.
With some pretty unique powers.
Right.
Tied to something called the singularity.
The singularity?
Yeah. Basically, it's this point where technology advances so rapidly that it changes the very nature of humanity.
Okay. We could probably do a whole deep dive on just the singularity alone.
Oh, easily.
But in this context, why is it important?
Well, it gives Jinx a very unique perspective.
Okay.
He's not bound by these like traditional power structures or ideologies.
So he's kind of a free agent.
Exactly. He's driven by his own sense of justice.
Okay.
And that leads him to the Holy Tefillin.
The Holy Tefillin.
Yeah, it's an artifact that can nullify superpowers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he sees it as a way to level the playing field, especially against the Messiah.
Makes sense.
Now, the source material doesn't really go into detail about what the singularity actually is.
Right.
But it does seem to suggest that Jinx's powers are somehow derived from it.
So that's what makes him so interesting.
Totally. He represents a completely different kind of power.
Yeah.
One that's not limited by the physical world.
Right.
He's a total wild card in a game with increasingly high stakes.
And those stakes get even higher when it's revealed that the Don has the Holy Tefillin.
Oh, yeah.
This is the guy with ties to this shady organization.
The organization.
Right, the organization.
Yeah, it's like super beings, secret organizations, ancient artifacts, and all these geopolitical conflicts all converging on this one object.
That's like the Infinity Gauntlet of the Earth's mightiest universe.
Exactly. And in the middle of all this chaos, Jinx manages to actually get the Holy Tephilim.
Oh, wow.
He's driven by his own personal code.
Uh-huh.
And this leads to this huge showdown with the Messiah.
Okay.
He exposes all of the Messiah's brutality to the world.
Oh, wow.
And ultimately kills him.
That's a big turning point.
It is. It's like the creators are saying that even a supposed godlike figure can be brought down.
Yeah.
Especially when their hypocrisy is laid bare for everyone to see.
Right. But what happens after that?
Well, the Messiah's death triggers a second civil war in America.
Oh, wow.
Sergeant Sharia's forces end up clashing with those who are still clinging to the old order.
So basically the country is tearing itself apart.
Pretty much. The sources are a little vague on the specifics.
Right.
But it seems like a really bloody and chaotic conflict that completely reshapes the nation.
So we've gone from this global invasion to a superhero's fall from grace to a civil war fueled by ideology and religious fervor.
It's a lot to take in.
It really is, and I'm curious to see where the creators go with this story next.
Me too. This second civil war just raises so many questions.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, did Jinx actually achieve justice by killing the Messiah?
Right.
Or did he just create a power vacuum that someone like Sergeant Sharia will fill?
It's a good question.
Yeah. And what about Stratos?
Oh, yeah. Is he still out there?
Is he going to come back?
Yeah, and if so, what role will he play in this new world order?
Right. It feels like we've only scratched the surface of this whole universe.
Yeah, there's so much more to explore.
Absolutely. And I think that's what makes it so compelling.
Yeah.
It's not just about the action and spectacle, it's about exploring these deeper questions about power ideology and the choices we make when we're faced with extraordinary circumstances.
So much to process still.
Yeah.
We went from a global invasion to a Superman-like figure who starts questioning everything he thought he knew.
Totally.
And now we've got this civil war breaking out in America.
Right. It's a wild ride.
It really is. It's like if you smashed a superhero comic and a geopolitical thriller together.
And added a dash of social commentary.
Yeah, for sure.
It makes you think, It
really does. And I think one of the things that really got to me was the whole parallel between Stratos and Superman.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
They both start off as these symbols of hope and idealism.
Classic archetype.
Right. But then Stratos' journey takes this really dark turn.
Yeah, he has to face some harsh realities.
Yeah. He sees the failings of his own country, the hypocrisy of his allies, and just the limits of his own power,
Right, and that's what makes it so different from a traditional Superman story. I mean, usually Superman always finds a way to stick to his values.
Right.
He's always this beacon of hope no matter how bad things get.
Yeah, but Stratos' story is saying maybe that's not always possible.
Exactly, like in the real world.
Right.
It's messy and complicated.
Totally, and all those compromises you have to make, they can wear down even the strongest ideals.
Yeah, even Superman.
Right, and it makes you wonder what happens to a symbol like that when the world he's trying to save stops believing in him.
It's a good question.
What happens when the people he represents are the ones turning against him?
It really taps into a lot of the anxieties we're seeing right now, don't you think?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like the whole erosion of trust in institutions, the polarization of politics, the feeling that everything's falling apart.
Yeah, Stratos' journey reflects all of that.
Exactly, and his disillusionment becomes a powerful symbol of our own uncertainty about the future.
Absolutely. And on top of that, you've got Sergeant Sharia.
Right, this almost anti-Captain America.
Yeah.
Rising from the ashes.
It's like he represents everyone who feels betrayed by the system.
Totally.
Abandoned by their leaders and forced to fight for an America that doesn't seem to exist anymore.
And the creators intentionally leave his motives a bit unclear.
Right.
Is he a true believer or just another opportunist?
Yeah.
It's hard to say.
It really adds to that whole unsettling feeling.
It does. And then, of course, you've got Jinx.
Right, the wild card.
The one who throws everything off balance.
Yeah, he's playing by a different set of rules.
Totally. He doesn't care about the established power structures.
He just wants to see justice done.
Exactly. And when he gets his hands on the Holy Tephilim...
Right, that artifact that can nullify superpowers.
Everything changes.
It really does. Suddenly anything is possible.
And then he kills the Messiah.
Yeah, such a huge moment.
Exposes him for the fraud he is.
But did he actually achieve justice?
That's the question, isn't it?
Yeah, or did he just create a space for someone like Sergeant Sharia to step in?
Because the sources mention this Boston Declaration. Right.
Which seems to mark the beginning of Sergeant Sharia's rule over America.
So a new world order.
But what does that even look like?
Yeah, and what does it mean for everyone else?
It's a pretty scary thought.
It is. It's like the story ends, but you're left with this feeling of unease.
Like the fight is far from over.
Exactly. It's like the creators gave us a glimpse into a world teetering on the edge of radical change.
And it leaves us with more questions than answers.
Way more, and that's what makes it so good.
That's the power of good storytelling.
Yep.
It doesn't wrap everything up in a neat little bow.
Right.
It makes you think, it makes you uncomfortable, and it forces you to face the complexity of the world.
Where the lines between good and bad, right and wrong are totally blurred.
Totally.
Well, this deep dive into Earth's mightiest has been quite a journey.
It has.
It's a world that's both familiar and deeply unsettling.
Definitely.
And it reminds us that the choices we make, they have consequences.
Always.
That can affect so many people.
But even in a world like this,
where things seem really bleak, there's always hope.
there is.
There's always the possibility for change.
Yeah, for progress, for a better future.
And that's a message worth holding on to.
Absolutely, even in the darkest of times.
Exactly.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, stay curious, stay engaged.
You keep questioning.
Never stop.